what it would cost to get Bill. Vrabel's the other guy, John, who go back and look. The last 2 times the Titans have played the Chiefs, Mahomes has 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, sacked 8 times in his last 2 games against the Titans. So Vrabel's another guy. Bigger than Kyle, though, so could work against him. But
would they take Vrabel or Belichick over Steve Wilks? Of course, we're stating the obvious. I do wonder if either guy, you'd basically be signing him for 1 season, and they would not come cheap, which doesn't matter. I mean, this isn't a salary cap position. It's just, could you convince them to do this? You could argue Vrabel needs it less. He's still younger. He could just kind of chill this year. You could convince me of a guy that's hasn't missed a training camp in the pros since 1975. And especially it's been well documented, his respect for the family, starting with Mike. It was like one of his close friends in the league, to then Kyle, which he clearly respects a lot. Because I would rather have Bill. Because you agree, if you get one of these, it's a 1-year contract. So you're just kind of hiring a mercenary to come help you out, and he's going to leave, which is fine.
And hopefully you've got, maybe you can get your next guy in the building to learn for a year.
Yeah. Because let's face it, when they hired Steve Wilks, they were hoping to keep doubling down on the picks, which
they were hoping that. Yeah, I mean, maybe it was still a little bit of a stretch that Steve was about to become a head coach. At minimum, I think you're hoping for your Steve Spagnuolo, right?
I don't think in a year. I just mean over time. Yeah, right. He had been a guy he coached a year, disaster in Arizona, then was an interim, had some success, almost got the Panther job, it felt like, or was in the mix to keep that gig. That they thought, he's be solid for a couple years, get that and move him out. And I don't want to say it backfired, because he wasn't terrible. It was off. And I think part of the thing is, when you really look at his resume, who were you buying? What were you getting? You weren't getting a guy Andy knew what he was getting. He had worked with him before. He had coached against him, because he left Andy as a position coach to go to the Giants to be the coordinator. And obviously they've been friends for obviously a long, long time. And, he wasn't an outsider. And it does feel like the first coach that Kyle put in a prominent role. I don't count special teams, because I don't. But the offense has just been littered with the Kubiaks, the Slowicks, the LaFleurs, the McDaniel, the people he knows. Really, even Greasy, he needed a quarterback coach. What did he do? Hired the dude that played for his dad, that he had coached as a quality control guy, that I'm sure is one of the rare guys in the quote-unquote media that he texts with constantly. So he does not go out of no history here, and he did. And that's obviously what Belichick or Vrabel would be. I mean, I would just beg Belichick. Now, I don't know if he would, both those guys, especially Bill, would he move to San Jose for a year? I don't know. I mean, obviously, I don't expect it to happen. I do think – I think Kyle called him a month ago. Once it was clear, there's no lock, he's getting a head coaching job. You'd be naive to think that they haven't had contact a long time ago. That's Kyle's job.
Brady. Yep. And Lynch, I don't
think
the
Vrabel thing. Vrabel wasn't a great defensive coordinator relative to when he was the DC at Houston. If you look at the numbers,
no, it was bad. Just 1 year, but his offense, their offense was terrible too.
Their teams that were good are represent Mike Vrabel. I think it's fair to say. If Mike Vrabel's I'm open, if he tweets out right now, I'm open to be a DC this year, I do think there would be teams that would be willing to fire their defensive coordinator, hire Mike Vrabel.
Was he calling defense? He was clear. He was not uninvolved in the defense, right, in Tennessee, but he had a defensive coordinator also.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know exactly.
I don't think he called the defense, but I do think philosophically they view football as the same human. Run the ball, play D. Beat you up.
Steve Belichick's on the West Coast now. Pete Carroll's available, John. Rex Ryan's free. There's a long list of legacy defensive coaches out there. Rex Ryan.
Would he hire Pete Carroll?
I mean, I think of all those guys we mentioned, I don't think people think this. I think Pete would be the last guy to take that job. I think Pete, more than any of those other guys, as much as we think no, Bill's the guy that has to be in charge. I think Pete enjoys the culture building more than the third down play calling. And I think Pete's the most head coach of any of those guys, actually, as weird as that sounds. I think people think like Pete would come in and be happy. Like, no, Pete wants to fucking put up the basketball hoop and bring in his guy and like,
he liked
drive the
elevating to
ship.
the CEO more than like,
I
mean,
think
Bill this year, it's like, what was the former offensive lineman from Fresno State? Cole
Popovich.
Yeah, was his assistant offensive line coach? Oh, no, it was like Adrian Clem. Got sick or something. And like a lot of people reported Bill was much more active coaching the offensive line. You know, Bill likes the coaching. I think I'd give him 1 year, $25 million and have him come out here.
Kyle. You know those shows where they're like secret boss, where like the CEO comes down and like works in the cat. It's like the head of Starbucks comes down, Mr. Schultz.
Yeah.
And he'll like come down and make coffee in a disguise. That's Bill's fucking dream, is that they make him like all he has to do is be the barista. That's what it seems like, right? Bill just wants to get into the tape and call plays.
Wasn't that what Chip has been dreaming about for years?
Yeah. I think Chris Peterson always said, like, you know, there was a part of me that was happiest when I was just drawing plays on napkins in Boise. So,
I think it'd be sweet, but I don't believe that if Steve Wilks is fired, I think he knows who he's going to hire. I can't imagine you in middle of February, you'd fire a guy blind as part of the problem, right? That's where I'm not as convinced, because I think the names you're rolling out, like I know I saw you talked about Rex Ryan earlier. I don't think Kyle would mess with Rex Ryan. Rex Ryan's
feels like a weird
fit. It's not.
But I do think, Kyle, if this job opens, you can go. All of a sudden, you can pull somebody out of another job. Not an NFL. I mean, it would be tough.
Well, you can't steal a coach.
You can't steal an NFL coach. Yeah,
like that's part of the problem.
Dan Lynn, be risky.
That's a pretty big risk.
I know that's risky. But
like, to me, if you would have told me that
they were in a situation
they needed a defensive coordinator like last year and hired him, that makes more sense than firing a guy to hire a guy who he'd worked in. Didn't he come from the Ravens for a couple years?
Who?
Lynn's kid.
Yeah. Yep.
So like he's got that mentor McDonald, like he's worked with those guys. Like it's not crazy. Honestly, the move would have been like, what's USC paying you to be their DC? 1.5. We'll pay you $2 million to be our DB coach with Bill or something like that.
I like that move.
Again, that's one of Kyle's great advantages right now is Jed's willing to cut them big checks because it's proven to work. For as shitty as that was yesterday or 2 days ago, it worked. Like, what would Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie have done to be in that position to lose the Super Bowl?